Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for Modern Survivalist, and this is going to be a video about survival preparedness and raising your kids. If you have a kid on the way or if you already have one, this is what this video is going to be about. This is a video that was requested in my Spanish channel more recently, but it's been asked for a few times through email and here as well. Also in Instagram, my account is Ferfal308. You can follow me on Instagram. I'll leave the link below, and I'll leave the link for my Spanish channel. Some guys told me that they like to learn Spanish, so that's maybe something you could use as well. So I'll leave the link for the Spanish channel, Supervivencia Moderna, that's how it's called, there too. So yeah, as some of you already know, I'm a parent, I'm a father. I have 3 boys, aged 2, 11, and 18, so I have a little bit of experience. And unlike a lot of parents, I do spend a lot of time with my kids. It's not something that I'm distant from, and I'm very much a hands-on type of parent. So before I go on with this, I'm already forgetting, I just want to ask for a small tiny favor. For those of you guys that have been in my channel for a while now, I know many of you have bought my books, either the Modern Survival Manual or my latest one, Street Survival Skills, which I strongly recommend. I think it's maybe one of the best ones for you getting started or bugging out and relocating. If you liked any of these, do me a small favor. Drop by Amazon, leave a review there. It is like 30 seconds, and for me it's huge. It's a massive hand in terms of helping with my work. So if you can do that, or if you haven't bought these already, suggest doing so as well. Now, regarding this video, the point number 1 I want to talk about is actually mentioned here in Street Survival Skills. It's just a quote, but it's one of those powerful quotes that you definitely want to live by. It says, this is from Hippocrates. He says, if you're not your own doctor, you're a fool. That's what you don't hear very often. If you're not your own doctor, you're a fool. That's tip number 1, key, essential as a parent. You will have to make up your own mind regarding lots of things. This is kind of like life philosophy in general, and it's happened to me as well. Even with medical advice after visiting a doctor, I've been told I have asthma. I've done all the tests and all the stuff. Yeah, yeah. No, I don't. No, I don't. I never need it. I was prescribed one of those puffy things like 20 years ago. Never used that in my life. I never even bought it. As soon as I was diagnosed that, I said, you know what? Go screw yourself. I don't have any of this thing you're mentioning. You know, I don't have any asthma. I just have maybe an allergic reaction during summer, pollen, like any normal people. If I'm working on a house that's been closed for 20 years and the dust, yeah, sure, that affects every single human, at least most people. But I was prescribed that. I was told you have to use this whenever you're short of breath. Give yourself a puff. And I went, wait. I never told you I'm ever short of breath. What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. Never in my life have I been, like grasping for air or out of air. Doesn't seem logical. I completely ignored all that advice, all those tests done, and I've lived my life normally without any kind of problem whatsoever. I've been told by a dentist they had to pull 2 of my teeth because they were basically like rotting in my mouth, and I needed 2 implants. 2 pretty expensive implants as well. I didn't mind paying for them, but I just thought it just doesn't make any sense. All of a sudden, I need 2 teeth that seem to have like a cavity, something, to fix, and it just had fallen off. I went to another dentist, one that I trusted a little bit more, and no, hey Fernando, this is just fine. You just need a little bit of that paste thing, and that's it. Yes, it's kind of like a big hole that you have there, but it's no big deal. I can patch this up for you just fine using a compound rebuilding of the tooth with different polymer stuff, modern stuff. 3 years later, I'm just perfectly fine. So this happens a lot. Unfortunately, it happens a lot with doctors. Just like it happens with your bad mechanic, your bad plumber, your bad contractor, you have bad dentists, and you have bad doctors as well. They are thinking more of running their business than what's in your own best interest. For them, you're just money, unfortunately for some of them, so you have to make up your own mind. It actually happened with my youngest son. He spent like almost like I'm gonna be saying a full day, but several hours in ICU when he was born. I was looking at him. This kid is perfectly fine. Why is he here? And the doctor was, no, yeah, he's fine. We're having him here just in case. Just in case of what? It's a baby, wants to be with his mother. You're keeping him here, doesn't make any sense. And, I kind of blame myself for that because I knew there was nothing wrong with my son. Nothing at all, absolutely. And it was, yeah, but we're just, they're very cunning. Sometimes some of these guys are very cunning. No, we just want to keep him here just in case, giving him a little bit of warmth. What's better warmth than his own mother keeping him and breastfeeding him? Then I realized they did that so as to charge the insurance because everything was being covered by the insurance. But they did this. My medical, thing, it just covers everything. That's great. That's fantastic. But it's not about the money. It's about why am I having my kid here when he should be with his mother? And then I realized, doing a little bit more research and finding out lots of stuff, they do this so as to charge you those hours in ICU, right? So as to charge that to the company when the kid is perfectly fine. Yes, bastards, yes, absolutely, but there's bastards out there that are doctors, and they will do this sort of thing. There's hospitals that have this, just in case, keep the kid. I've been told to, one of my kids, I had to do a circumcision because he had a little bit of an infection. That doesn't seem right. Why would I cut my kid's penis if he hasn't got any problem at all? No, you see how it's red here? Yeah, I have other kids as well. It's perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong with this, with my boy. No, but this is better because, no, it's not. So, don't do any unnecessary surgery on your son or your daughter. Just leave them as they are. And if you're being told to do surgery, they have your second and have your third opinion because many times this is exactly what happens. It's about making money. Dear God, don't cut up your son's or daughter's genital by any means. There's really no need for that whatsoever. Again, 3 boys. Just trust me on that. It is just about something that it's going to be putting a little bit more money into some very rich people already, but they want to have even more. So don't do unnecessary surgery on your kids. Right? I shouldn't even be saying this, but just point number 2, so as to not make this super long because it's going to be a little bit of a longer video. The aspect of psychology and upbringing your kids. This is a full-time job. This is something that you have to be working on all the time. The way you bring up your kids will directly affect what kind of people they are when they're older. Sure, there's a little bit of a genetic impact there. Some genes will give you certain traits and certain bonuses or work against you depending on how lucky or unlucky you are, sure, but it's mostly about how you've been brought up and most of all about the experiences you've had. Sometimes there's people that do great in spite of very awful adversity. There's people that had some of the worst parents in the planet, drunks, drug addicts, got beaten, got abused, and they end up doing very well in life. That's because they overcome their adversity. Adversity is often very good. Now, being successful in what our culture considers successful, what is it? Having a lot of money, being a happy person, maybe. How is it that you define success? So you want to have kids that are successful. But what does that actually mean? So a kid that was brought up in a very poor home, abuse and such, maybe that kid is super motivated so as to overcome the adversity he's been suffering his entire life. So he's going to be working very hard. He's going to be very motivated. And maybe he's going to be doing very well, economically speaking. Does that mean that's going to be a happy person? Sometimes not so much. It's actually going to be... It's often harder for people that manage to figure out things in terms of work, economy, money and such, how to overcome the psychological damage that they've suffered as kids because of the neglect, because of the abuse. So they may end up being people that are very successful in terms of their line of work or their economic achievements. But at the end of the day, many of these folks are not really happy people. So it's kind of like, what's the point, That's still demons in their heads. This is, of course, some of the worst case scenarios in which, in the future, people that end up doing very well for themselves. But if we're talking about raising our kids, That's something we want to be very careful about. How you speak to your kids, the tone of voice that you use, according to their age, even according to how kids are. My little kid, my smallest one, 2 years old, the little kid is a little beast. You have to always be very careful about those lines. Of course, a baby with older brothers, he's trying to be an older person already. I have neighbors that look at him and say, he speaks like he's a couple years older. He's not, he's just turned 2 years old or something like that. Just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Yes, it does, because when you bring up a kid in a household with older brothers and he's spending a lot of time with them rather than other babies, they just evolve and mature in their communication skills a lot faster. There's also a very natural aspect of competition, of if that little baby isn't fast enough and quick enough, his older brothers are always going to be getting the best out of him. Even in small little things like playing or getting something. So he's forced to evolve and mature a lot faster. But there's different type of personalities. I have maybe one of my kids is a little bit more sensitive than the other. Maybe one is a little bit more detached, a bit more cooler in some aspects regarding keeping his composure. And you have to work more with the ones that are a little bit more sensitive in that regard. So each kid is different, but parenting goes a long way. If you do your work properly, you will be very successful. This video could be 10 hours long. I wouldn't tell you half of it. But a diet, how you teach your kids to eat. Are you going to be giving kids... I've seen kids that had a Coca-Cola bottle, when... and talking about that, don't give your kid formula. If you have somewhat of a normal family, you got your kid with natural reproductive methods. You have a wife that has brought that kid to this world. She's perfectly capable of breastfeeding the child. We have been told many times, oh yes, but I'm not getting, people are all different. Some people are more dedicated. Some people are more motivated. Some people are willing to sacrifice more. Some people, I've heard from mothers that said they weren't breastfeeding their kids because it hurts. You couldn't get my wife to not breastfeed her kids. No matter how much it hurts, no matter how much it bites, those are natural things that happen, but it's about dedication. And of course, yes, absolutely, breastfeeding your kid is by far the best thing to do in terms of nutritional value, in terms of exercise for the respiratory system of the child, development of the mouth, the nose, the lungs. He's doing a lot of effort. He's if you've seen a little baby breastfeed, especially if it's a little bit warmer summer, they're sweating. That's exercise for them. Not only are they eating, but they're working out. Now, if you have a big bottle with some formula, you just put the thing in the kid's mouth, he just swallows half of it, and he's going to be fat. And, oh, look, my baby is bigger than yours, and he's super fat. Yes, he's fat. And as we all know, being fat is not always a good idea, even for babies. So a baby that's being fed is going to be usually a lot skinnier than a baby that's on a bottle. The bottle gives the mother more freedom in terms of not having to wake up in the middle of the night, so has to breastfeed the kid 2 or 3 times per night or whatever. But the health benefits are, and health benefits in physical and psychological are enormous. The kid should be breastfed. It's a mammal. It has to breastfeed. That's the way it should be. And anything else, it's by far second, third worst solution. So in terms of feeding your kid, are you giving your kids candy? Are you giving your kids a soda? I've seen it. You've seen it as well. A baby with a bottle with Coke in it, or drinking soda from I once saw this kid, a kid that might have been like 6 years old and had maybe 30 pounds of fat in that kid's body. And the mother was opening a can of Coke, putting a straw in it, and there he was again. That's just awful parenting. Teach your kids to eat well. Teach your kids from a very early age. If you start very soon, they will eat anything. I mean, my kids have eaten bugs. If you leave a kid in the yard and he finds a bug, very naturally he's going to be doing this. A baby will naturally eat ants. And That's the way kids learn. We're little monkeys, and when left in nature, going to be eating stuff and see what you can eat and swallow and just digest so as to survive. It's your natural instinctive mechanism. Of course, you're not going to be feeding your kids bugs from the garden, but it's super easy to get a very small kid to eat fruit. You just cut it, they're going to be eating. As soon as they have teeth, taking bites out of stuff, very natural thing to do. That's the way it's supposed to be, and that's how you get a kid. Unlike myself, when I was a kid, until I was like an adult, I didn't realize how important it was to eat a balanced diet of fruits, vegetables, and that sort of thing. Oh, my kid doesn't like fruits and vegetables. Okay, insist. Work harder at it. If you do that, you're going to be having much healthier kids, and the benefits are all over the place. You have kids that are just healthier all around. The diet, psychological aspect is huge. Working out, exercising, get your kids involved in sports that teach them valuable lessons, teamwork, stuff regarding self-defense when they're older enough. Those things you want to keep in mind. This video is going to be huge. I'm sorry for that, but I think it's important. And again, it was requested. Number 3, teaching your kids about life in terms of success, winning, losing. We live in a culture where losing seems to be a bad word, and that's just stupid, because if you don't lose, you never learn. You learn by experience, and if you have experience, more often than not, you're going to be making mistakes. You're going to be screwing up. You're going to be losing. This world where we live now, that everyone gets a medal, everyone gets a trophy for participating, that is bullshit. That just doesn't work and doesn't motivate people to win, to succeed, to overcome themselves. We've been... And this is something you probably like. When I say, oh yeah, we live in a culture where everyone gets a participation prize, everyone gets a medal, there's no winners and losers. I know that you're going right now, yeah, you're so right. But how many times have you looked at, yeah, that guy is a winner, he wins. Or yeah, that's a loser, a stupid loser. You know who goes around saying loser, calling people losers? People that are losers themselves. People that have struggle, fought, lost, and eventually succeed will not go around calling our people losers, because they've been in that position many times. You have no single case of anyone that succeeded at anything, really, not just being handed out stuff, but actually won and overcome adversity, that hasn't lost a few times or many times. Man, if you have any type of business, of entrepreneur mentality, you failed way more often than you've succeeded. I know I do that all the time. For everything I get right, I get 10 wrong. Now, you know what? I don't let those 10 things I got wrong bring me down. I just motivates me to do better. That's how it should be, and that's what you should be teaching your kids. All right? So there's nothing wrong. You have to teach your kids there's nothing wrong with losing. The real loser is the one that never competed, the one that never participated, the one that never exposed himself to lose. This happens in YouTube. Every time you get an asshole with a stupid, you know what? One of the first things I do when I have the time to waste, but I confirm what I already know by just clicking on the loser that is insulting you or putting you down. You click on it, and I've never come across someone that was insulting me or degrading me or saying any nasty thing on YouTube or pretty much anywhere else. If you click on it, that person has 0 videos uploaded. That person has done 0 in his life in that which he believes is entitled to criticize. It's been, I don't know how many years, that is 100%. Never have I come across a troll that actually had any videos of his own. It's just it's very natural to put yourself in that position of, yeah, that guy is a loser, that guy is an asshole, he's stupid or whatnot, but you never did anything yourself. That's something you have to pass along to your kids. And then there's always also winning and losing, and you also have to decide which one do you want to be. Do you want to be a winner or do you want to be a loser? And that's not linked to being a good person or a bad person. You can be a very awful person and just be very good at succeeding because you're motivated and you keep on trying, you keep on doing things, and you succeed. Doesn't mean you're a good person. You can be a complete bastard and actually win very often. So there's a lot to be learned there as well. Number 4. Yeah, this video is going to be super long. Babies, diapers. This is something that I get asked. What is it I should have in terms of kits? As stuff for my baby. Man, it is really not that complicated. In terms of kits, the kind of survival kits, bug out bags, that sort of thing. If you have a baby on the way, you probably want to put together a bag with diapers, little towels, spare set of clothes in case they get dirty, wet, puke on themselves. Puke is something you will have to get used to because it's just a natural part of babies and such, or even kids get sick, they vomit, that sort of thing. But a typical diaper bag, the only thing that I would add from your typical one would be having maybe some medicine for fever, some and some formula as well. Even though your baby should not have a formula because he should be breastfeeding, that is by far the most natural and best thing for your child, you want to have a couple bottles of that nasty crappy shit, because in case something happens to the mother and she has to either travel, she has to be hospitalized, she has to go somewhere else, even if your child breastfeeds, you want to have a little bit of that, because you never know, if something ends up happening, at least you have something that a child will somewhat eat. He will not like that shit if he's used to breastfeeding from mom, but you want to have it because that's your emergency food supply for babies in a worst case scenario for a baby's world, which is not having mom breastfeed him, right? So your tactical diaper bag, as I've seen it mentioned before, man, it's basically just a few diapers, spare clothes, and a little bit of medicine for some of the more common illnesses that a child is likely to have. Don't forget water as well. A bottle of water for your child. Babies should not be, very small children should not be drinking water. It's actually, there's been cases of people that kill their kids just giving them waters as very small babies. They just starve to death by just filling themselves with water. But after a certain age, yes, a little bit of water is something that a baby should be drinking, of course. Trying to move a little bit faster. Number 5, children. What is it that you prepare in terms of 5, 6, 7, maybe 10-year-old kid? I guess like 10-year-old going on in his maybe even earlier, 8, 9 years old. This is going to be depending on what school you are, but there's going to be a certain age in which your kid is going to be going out in their school for a camping trip or scouts. So they're going to be out there alone under adult supervision that you hopefully trust. Be very careful with that. I don't trust most adult supervision. If my kids are with someone else, I distrust them completely. I have no trust whatsoever in anyone other than myself and my wife, in terms of other adults. You don't know if that guy is a pervert or that woman, that girl, that cute preppy 20-year-old, you don't know if she's a pervert, if she's wrong in her head, and no matter how innocent she or he looks, you don't know what's going on inside there. They may be a complete pervert or just have very mean intentions. There's all sorts of evil, crappy people out there. So be very careful who you trust your kid with. Now, there's going to be a time in which you have to make that very tough decision of, am I going to be letting my kid live, or am I going to be keeping him in a bubble for the rest of his life? That's not going to be an option. So one of the things 8, 10-year-olds out in their first field trip or whatever, you want to prepare a small survival kit. What I did with my kids, and this is a kit that I basically repeated over the years as they went through these phases, is one of these breastfeeding Ziploc type bags, which seal very nicely. That works like a water container. In that bag, you put yet another spare bag, so as to have 2 water containers. You put a cell phone, the smallest one you can find. Usually the cheap ones have good batteries, so you give the kid that cell phone, a flashlight, whistle, and a little bit of cash. Maybe a couple coins in case, anything that's using cell phone, but you have that phone there. Basically, that's a little survival kit for a kid going out in school trips, or maybe spending the day out camping or whatever. If they get lost, that is a small survival kit that may get them out of some trouble. You may come across this thing about teachers saying, yes, phones are banned in this trip. Yeah, screw them. It's not your kid. I'm not putting my kid in danger because you're stupid or you have any wrong message about how life should be lived. You give that kid that kit and you explain to your child, look, You keep this for emergencies. The phone is going to be turned off. If you get lost, you get the phone out of the bag, you turn it on, and you call us. That is basically what they should be doing. Your kid should at this point be having brought up well enough just to understand this kind of message and not screw around and play with a phone and get it confiscated by the teacher in the bus when going to wherever it is that they're going. Number 6, gun safety. This is something I should do a separate video about, but again, with 3 kids, I've reached the point where my kids are just, guns are super normal here. My kids would not think about grabbing a gun and loading it on their own without me being around any more than they would think about getting my keys and going for the car and turning the car on and try driving on their own. Or get a knife from the kitchen drawer and stab one another. That's not what kids do when they're brought up properly. And same applies for firearms. Yes, you have to be super careful with firearms, especially at a very early age when they don't know any better, and they should be kept in a safe place where it's impossible for them to access it. Even if you have loaded firearms, depending on the type of gun, you may want to have yes, this would be one of those cases in which an empty chamber may be something you want to have depending on where you live, the kind of access you have to safes or not, and what kind of precautions you're taking. An empty chamber is really no safety for a firearm because kids get left with a gun. That's already huge. But it is true that if you have, for example, a shotgun and you're keeping it with an empty chamber, patrol ready like police do, yes, you have it with an empty chamber, you chamber around. It's not going to be a safety measure, but it is a little bit of extra that could avoid a tragedy. But above all, if you have kids, they should either not having access to firearms because they're not mature enough so as to know how to handle those or not handle those, which is the big thing you're going to be teaching them at first. And yes, once they do, they're mature enough and have the information so as to, yeah, that's simply something I don't touch. We just touch it when we go shooting with dad. He takes the guns, the ammo, and we shoot it. If not, it's just not messed with because that's not what you do. If you bring up your kids right, they're never going to be touching a gun when they're not supposed to. It's like, again, it's like, am I at risk of my 10-year-old grabbing my kitchen knife and stabbing his little brother? Yes. If you brought up a perfect psychopath, maybe. If you did your job as a parent, that's simply not going to be happening. Accidents can happen always. That's why you take all the precautions in spite of all this. Ideally, you would have a safe with quick access or a safe with a key. And you have your guns locked and easy to reach, or you have a combination lock, or you have actually a couple of different safes. You have a safe that's easy to access, you have another bigger safe with more guns, or whatever is your case, but you have to find a solution so as to keep your family safe, while at the same time you have those firearms you know you may end up needing one day, right? But maybe that's for a separate video. Just be very careful regarding lots of this stuff if you have kids in your house. Number 7, be patient. You know, kids have, this is something especially for new parents. What first-time parents tend to do is overestimate the age of their kids. You see parents, and this happened to me as well, it happened to every first parent ever. You have a 2-year-old and you're treating him like a 5 or a 10-year-old. No, it's just a 2-year-old and his understanding of the world is completely different. And then by the time you have a 5-year-old, you think, hey, I have myself a little man here. No, he's really not. When you have your 20-year-old, you're going to be realizing what a son that's already an adult and a real man is. When he's 5 years old, he's still very much a child. And it's very common to overestimate the level of maturity that child has. So always, my advice would be always land on the side of caution and underestimating it, because there's a very solid good chance that you're overestimating his understanding, his age, and what he's capable of, and you're putting your kid in a very tough spot because you're demanding more of him than he's actually capable of in terms of not intelligence, not his intellectual abilities, but his maturity level out of simply age. You know, it's like expecting a 1-year-old baby not to poop himself. He just cannot do that. He's beyond his control. Same thing here. Number 8. Teach your kids when they're old enough to somewhat be on their own. Teach your kids how to react in cases of danger? What should your kid be doing if someone tries to grab them, get hold of them? It's very natural for a child, even for adults. If someone grabs you, the first thing most people do is freeze. You just, what's going on? You're just like a deer facing headlights. You just freeze. Kids especially tend to do this. You have to teach them, and you have to practice this with them. If someone grabs you like this, you do this. You start screaming, you start cursing, you start crying out for help, you start yelling that it's not your dad, it's not your mom, help. People will usually help children. People usually suck. People usually suck. But there's a greater degree of someone helping out a child. This is something that I've done myself. I've gone past people that were having a bit of an argument. Not going to be getting involved in people arguing in the street. Even if it's a heated argument, oh yeah, screw you, or whatever. They're fighting. Okay, adults. Now, if it's a kid, that's the kind of thing you just cannot walk past. You have to get involved because it's a child. You wouldn't want your child to be in a sketchy situation with an adult that's maybe kidnapping him or her and no one doing anything. So that's like a red line in which you have to get involved. I think that people, even to an instinctive level, work that way. Some, of course, don't. And there's been kids that have been beaten to death in the park in front of other people, and people just didn't get involved. So that happens as well. Now, teach your kids how to react. Teach your kids to start fighting, screaming, kicking as soon as someone tries to grab them. Once they're in a truck, once they're in that fucking white van, you're not going to be seeing them again. Or chances of that happening are very rare. So teach your kids very well regarding that. Number 9, teach your kids to memorize contact information as soon as they're old enough. As soon as they start memorizing your name, your full name. Today, it's very easy for a cop, if they have the full name of the parent, it's kind of easy to find someone, with that full name. So as soon as your kid is old enough, you teach them their address, you teach them their full name. Address, again, simple enough to memorize as soon as a kid is old enough. And explain, as soon as you get lost, you find a responsible adult. I used to go with, try to find a cop. Sometimes you don't have a police officer, a cop. Usually, if it's an older lady, if it's a woman, kids will naturally, I think that even kids will naturally tend to ask for help for women instead of men. This would be one of those cases in which there's a greater chance of finding someone that is not dangerous if it's like a middle-aged woman than a guy. At least that's the way I feel about it. That's what I would advise my kids. Go with if you find a lady, if you find, and also adapt to the specific situation which you are in. If you are in Disneyland and you're going there with your kids and you have to explain to your kids, if you get lost, look for a guard, look for an employee of the park. They will have some sort of kit that they're wearing, dressing, some clothes. Look for an employee of this place and ask them for help. Don't go asking a random stranger, right? If you're in the beach, look for the lifeguard. That's the kind of thing you should be doing. Little by little, kids will get a feeling about this and know what kind of people are somewhat in charge or somewhat responsible to a certain degree of the place in which they are in, right? Telling a child just go look for a cop, sometimes cops are not around. But anyone that is working in that place has a good chance of being someone that's going to be taking them to the right person so as to help them out. Number 10, teach your kids to fight. This is going to be my last point, but it's also part of growing up, part of dealing with. This is something a lot of kids struggle with, a lot of parents struggle with because they don't know how to teach their kids right. A kid has to learn how to fight kids of his same age. Ideally, a little bit of training with some martial art. My suggestion is judo. Judo is very safe. There's no punching and kicking, so it's very safe for a kid, and it teaches techniques that are easy to apply against a stronger bully, a stronger kid without punching and relying on brute force, you get a feeling of how to deal with a stronger opponent, and also makes the kid himself stronger. Judo practitioners are pretty solid, sturdy people. That's going to be something that a kid can definitely use. But your kid has to learn how to stand up to bullies. It's just a part of life. I had my two kids, my two older ones already go through that, and it's a part of, what is it called, like passage of age or whatever. Yes, you have to stand to your bully, you have to beat your bully. That's when with my last kid, I had this conversation when he was having this problem. Yeah, there's this kid that always picks on me, and you have to be brutally honest with your kids. They're picking on you because they consider you weak. They perceive you as weak, and you may well be weak in terms of or they may perceive you as weak in spite of you having other strengths. Obviously, a bully considers you're an easy target, and you maybe have to do something to change that. And maybe that involves hurting this other kid in ways that you don't feel very happy about. But you definitely need to do that for your own well-being and for the other kids as well. A kid should understand also that there's consequences to what they do. If they start picking on someone, being mean to someone, and even physically hurting someone, there's going to be a consequence to that. And above all, this is about you. This is about what you like. Do you like feeling like this? Do you like being bullied and being treated like this when you go to school? Usually the answer is going to be, of course, no. Of course, okay, you can do something to change that. Right now, you're feeling like a loser because you are being a loser in this situation, in this interaction. You are losing, and this guy, this kid, or whoever it is, he's beating you, and you're in a position of submission. And the only way in which you can change that is through violence. Some healthy amount of violence will remedy this. And you teach your child how to apply that violence towards where it's needed, and usually the experience is quite enriching for everyone. It depends on each one. If your kid is practicing some martial art, maybe he knows something. Maybe you teach your son a few techniques so as to defeat someone. And one of the suggestions would be follow through. When you're fighting back, even as a child, follow through. This is for adults as well, but keep on until you completely eliminate any desire to continue with this confrontation from this kid. It's surprising how from one day to the next, Dad, he wants to be my best friend now. And eventually, they ended up being best friends. One of my kids is best friends with his former bully, and that's very natural. Once this interaction changes completely, kids change as well, and it's very healthy for everyone. Instead of being violent and mean to the other kid, the bully starts realizing that he's better off not doing that because it has consequences which he doesn't like getting the crap beating out of. So it changes the dynamic of how those kids interact, and maybe they end up being very good friends. So there's a little lesson there as well. Folks, I hope you weren't bored by this video and just gave you a few ideas of how to bring up your kids in a better, healthier, and more successful manner. See you on our next video, folks. Have an awesome day.